Hello comrades, and today we're going to talk about some basic principles in socialism and general Marxism in general. So today I figured I would go in with ownership of the means of production and the general reason as to why Marxists and communists in general believe it should be owned by the proletariat, or the workers. So I figure the best thing to go into is just in general terms. So, who are the proletariat? Well, they are those who do not have prior ownership of the means of production, so they have to sell their labour, which is often why we call it wage slavery, because they have no other choice. The other choice being starve to death, unless they live in a welfare capitalist country. So they sell their labour to the bourgeoisie, who are these people who own the means of production, be it a factory, an office, etc., etc., etc. They sell their labour and they work and they produce a profit for the bourgeoisie, and they only get a small portion of the value of their labour, whereas the bourgeoisie get the full value, get any surplus wealth the bourgeoisie get for not doing any work. Now, who are the bourgeoisie? Well, they are the owners of the means of production. Now, how does the bourgeoisie benefit from this? Well, the bourgeoisie benefit from this simply by, just in general, owning the means of production. Now, how did they come into ownership of the means of production in the first place? Well, typically there's three reasons. Three ways I should say. One, they exploited labour on a small scale, in which case it's no different. Two, they inherited it, which is like 90% of the time. Or three, they were exploited, and now they're exploiting others. In which case, there's just someone who's richer, who probably got it in some other way. Now, the bourgeoisie own the means of production. So again, it could be a factory or whatever, and they will employ the proletariat for a certain amount, and they will seek to make a profit, basically. So here's a really good example. So imagine a worker who is hired for an hour and paid $10 per hour. Once in a capitalist's employ, the capitalist can have him operate a boot-making machine with which the worker produces $10 worth of work every 15 minutes. Every hour, the capitalist receives $40 worth of work and only pays the worker $10, capturing the remaining $30 as gross revenue. Once the capitalist has deducted fixed and variable operating costs of, say, $20 leather, depreciation of machine, etc., he is left with $10. Thus, for an outlay of capital of $30, the capitalist obtains a profit of $10. His capital has not only been replaced by the operation but also increased. Now, the worker has done all the labour here, but the bourgeoisie gets it because he owned the means of production. This is why we say the workers should own their own means of production so they can get the full value of their labour, and thus they will not be being exploited. Now, here's the other thing. Workers often will become alienated from their labour because, they're not getting the full value of their labour, and honestly, to them, it means very little other than to gather the means of basic survival. Because they are not getting the full value of their labour, they are being exploited, and because they never truly see the end product of what they're producing as their own, they feel alienation, so the work to them never means very much. Now, what do we propose? Well, we propose worker ownership of the means of production. What would this entail? Well, honestly, not very much. It would mean seizing the means of production. So, how could we achieve this? Well, as Marx says in multiple occasions, it would require a violent revolution, due to the fact that, the bourgeoisie aren't willingly going to give this up, are they? So, at the end of the day, the way the means of production would function after we seized it could really go a number of ways. They could become workplace democracies, or they could just become flat places that anyone from a society can. This would be like a communist society, though, mind you, that anyone from any given place in society could go to and operate the means there, so they could just go and freely use the machinery to produce goods for society in general, opposed to having to sell themselves to someone who already owns the means of production. Now, I know to the capitalists out there potentially watching this, you're going to say, but surely, because the bourgeoisie has set up the means of production, they are entitled to the labour gathered from it. Well, here's the thing, no. Often the proletariat is the one who has set up the means of production in the first place through their labour, and the bourgeoisie is just benefiting from it. In a very rare amount of cases, the bourgeois has themselves worked on someone else's means of production, but then even in those cases, there's just someone richer and bigger out there. So that argument doesn't follow. The other argument is often, well, you know, but isn't that property theft? Well, I know it seems daft, but I've heard it before. Well, here's the thing. Laws are made up, okay? And at the end of the day, an unjust law is an unjust law, and we must abolish them. If you think that is intrinsically false, then I really urge you to revise your worldview and how you see the world and how you perceive it. But anyway, I will move on to the functionality and practicality of this in another video. But first and foremost, I must say the means of production is intrinsic to socialism. If a country does not have worker ownership of the means of production, it is not truly socialist. Thus, it is very important to analyse what worker ownership of the means of production actually is when we're looking at a country. Now, I'm going to just here draw a quick comparison to state ownership and to worker ownership, and finally private ownership. Now, a country that regards itself as socialist, is regarded to as socialist quite a lot of the time, is Venezuela, when in actuality Venezuela is not socialist. Now, Venezuela's economy is 70% private sector. This is like the complete opposite of socialism. It's literally capitalism. Now, what does that suggest to you? Well, it suggests to me that the country's fucking, you know, sorry, I was just flicking through things, I wanted to test that. It would suggest to me that the country is capitalist. But aside from that, why I say countries like the Soviet Union were not truly socialist is because they were state economies. So, capital and their functions were never truly abolished, they were merely undertaken by the state. That's why I do not believe it is socialist. The workers never owned the means of production, the state did. State ownership is never what I advocate for, with the exception of a few things here and there, like, you know, things that are too big for the workers to manage themselves, like a military, etc. You kind of get what I mean. Thus why any country that does not have worker ownership of the means of production, even if they call themselves socialist, is not truly socialist. Remember that. Anyway, I'm signing off, comrades. Leave a like, subscribe, comment and tell me how badly I did here. I hope this maybe helps someone. I feel like I rambled a little bit, but yeah, thanks. Auf Wiedersehen.